Hello and welcome to Millennium News Hour. I am Tanziba Nauri. In today's bulletin, we will present top and trending news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Biden pushes for 1.6 billion funding for pandemic fraud measures. US-Russia hold highest-level talks since Ukraine invasion. White House cybersecurity strategy stresses software safety. North Carolina legislators reach Medicaid expansion deal. California high schooler fatally stabbed in classroom fight. To the rooftops, staggering snowfall in California mountains. Lufthansa flight diverted after turbulence, 7 hospitalized. SpaceX launches US, Russia, UAE astronauts to a space station. Kremlin accuses Ukrainian saboteurs of attack inside Russia. Russian envoy says nuclear powers may clash over Ukraine. Deadly Greek train crash prompts strike, relatives give DNA. Netanyahu denounces protesters after Salon siege of his wife. Boris Johnson is skeptical about Rishi Sunak's new Brexit deal. India-China foreign ministers hold talks to mend ties. "20 injured by turbulence aboard Germany to Mauritius flight." Egypt unveils newly discovered chamber inside Great Pyramid. Gunmen threaten Messi shoot up family-owned supermarket. Jalen Carter, top NFL prospect, posts bombed in fatal crash. And Bruins lock up Pasternak with 8-year $90 million deal through 2031. Now news in detail. President Joe Biden's administration is asking Congress to approve more than $1.6 billion to help clean up the mess of fraud against the massive government coronavirus pandemic relief programs. In a strategy announced Thursday, the administration called for money and more time to prosecute cases, to put into place new ways to prevent identity theft, and to help people whose identities were stolen. On a call with reporters, White House American Rescue Plan Coordinator Jane Sperling had hope that Congress, including the GOP-controlled House that is often hostile to the Democratic administration, would see the spending as an investment. It's just so clear and the evidence is so strong that a dollar smartly spent here will return to the taxpayers or save at least $10, Sperling said, pointing to recoveries that have already happened. The US Secret Service last year got back $286 million sent out in fraudulently obtained loans through the Small Business Administration. Sperling said the request would be part of the budget proposal Biden is scheduled to make March 9, but the bulk of it will be separate from the one-year appropriation request. Details would need to be ironed out with Congress. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov talked briefly Thursday in the highest level in-person talks between the two countries since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But there was no indication of any movement toward easing the intense tensions between their two nations. The short encounter came as relations between Washington and Moscow have plummeted over Russia's war with Ukraine, and tensions have soared amid a myriad of disagreements, complaints, and recriminations on other matters ranging from arms control to embassy staffing and prisoners. US officials said Blinken and Lavrov chatted for roughly 10 minutes on the sidelines of the G20 conference of foreign ministers in New Delhi. But there was no sign of any progress, and the conference itself ended with the grouping unable to reach consensus on the Ukraine war. Still, with relations at perhaps their lowest point since the Cuban Missile Crisis during the Cold War, the mere fact that the two men met showed that, at least for the moment, lines of high-level communication between Washington and Moscow remains open. At a news conference, Blinken said he told Lavrov that the US would continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes and would push for the war to end through diplomatic terms that Kiev agrees to. The US government plans to expand minimum cybersecurity requirements for critical sectors and to be faster and more aggressive in preventing cyber attacks before they can occur, including by using military, law enforcement, and diplomatic tools, according to a Biden administration strategy document released Thursday. The Democratic administration also intends to work with Congress on legislation that would impose legal liability on software makers whose products fail to meet basic cybersecurity safeguards, officials said. The strategy largely codifies work that has already been underway during the last 2 years over a spate of high-profile ransomware attacks on critical infrastructure. An attack on a major fuel pipeline that caused panic at the pump and resulted in an East Coast fuel shortage, as well as other attacks, focused fresh attention on cybersecurity. But officials hope the new strategy lays the groundwork for countering an increasingly challenging cyber environment. North Carolina legislative leaders announced Thursday an agreement to expand Medicaid to hundreds of thousands of additional low-income adults through the Affordable Care Act. The deal, which likely won't be voted on until later this month, marks a milestone for Republicans, most of whom opposed the idea until recently for close to a decade. North Carolina has been one of 11 states that has not adopted Medicaid expansion under the agreement details, which also include easing certificate of need laws that require health regulators to sign off on expansion plans by medical providers. The state would start enrolling people in January. This is something that we can all be very proud of, House Speaker Tim Moore said at a legislative building news conference with Senate leader Phil Berger. What a huge announcement this is for North Carolina. What a huge policy direction this is. That will provide help for so many in this state, but it's going to do it in a way that's fiscally responsible. The federal government covers 90% of the cost of Medicaid recipients under expansion. Potentially, 600,000 people in North Carolina could receive the benefit. Those who make too much to qualify for conventional Medicaid but not enough to receive heavily subsidized health insurance that the 2010 law provides. A 16-year-old student involved in a fight at a Northern California high school was fatally stabbed Wednesday inside a classroom full of students, authorities said. Another student also suffered a stab wound, and the suspect, a 15-year-old freshman, is in custody, according to Santa Rosa police. All three students are male. The two victims, both juniors at Montgomery High School, walked into an art classroom around 11:15 a.m. and began fighting with the freshman, Santa Rosa Police Chief John Cregan said during a news conference. About 30 people were in the classroom. Teachers initially broke up the fight, but the freshman pulled out a folding knife and stabbed the juniors, the chief said. The juniors went to the school nurse and both were conscious and alert when they were taken to the hospital, Cregan said. But one of the teens, who had 3 stab wounds to his upper body, died there. Emergency crews in California scrambled Wednesday to shuttle food and medicine to mountain communities stranded by back-to-back winter storms that have dumped so much snow some residents can barely see out their windows. In San Bernardino County, east of Los Angeles, around the clock plowing is underway, but it could take more than a week to reach some areas, said Don Rowe, chair of the country's Board of Supervisors. Residents are dealing with as much as 7 feet of snow, and sheriff's authorities have conducted 17 rescue operations to help off-roaders and skiers. Emergency crews are trying to reach residents who need assistance. Governor Gavin Newsom on Wednesday proclaimed a state of emergency in San Bernardino and 12 other counties to support disaster relief by making state agencies and aid available and asking for federal help in clearing and repairing highways. The governor announced that the state was bringing in more snow plows and road crews to help clear roads, and he authorized the California National Guard to mobilize for disaster response if needed. A Lufthansa flight that experienced significant turbulence was diverted to Washington Dulles International Airport and 7 people on board were taken to area hospitals, officials said. Flight 469 from Austin, Texas had been headed to Frankfurt, Germany, but landed safely Wednesday evening at the airport in Virginia. Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority spokesman Michael Cabot said. Crews responded to the flight and took 7 people to hospitals with injuries that were believed to be minor, Cabot said. The Airbus A330 reported severe turbulence at an altitude of 37,000 feet while flying over Tennessee, the Federal Aviation Administration said in a statement. The agency is investigating. Now it's time for global updates. SpaceX launched 4 astronauts to the International Space Station for NASA on Thursday, including the first person from the Arab world going up for an extended months-long stay. The Falcon rocket bolted from Kennedy Space Center shortly after midnight, illuminating the night sky as it headed up the East Coast. Nearly 80 spectators from the United Arab Emirates watched from the launch site as astronaut Sultan Al Neyadi, only the second Emirati to fly to space, blasted off on his 6-month mission. Half a world away in Dubai and elsewhere across the UAE, schools and offices broadcast the launch live. Also riding the Dragon capsule that's due at the space station on Friday, NASA's Stephen Bowen, a retired Navy submariner who logged 3 space shuttle flights, and Warren Woody Herberg, a former research scientist at Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Space newbie, and Andriy Fidaev, a space rookie who is retired from the Russian Air Force. The Kremlin on Thursday accused Ukrainian saboteurs of crossing into western Russia and firing on villagers. Ukraine denied the claim and warned that Moscow could use the allegations to justify stepping up its own attacks in the ongoing war. The exact circumstances of the alleged attack reported in the Bryansk region were unclear, including what the strategic purpose of such an assault might be. If confirmed, it would be another indication following drone attacks earlier this week that Kiev may be stepping up pressure against Moscow by exposing Russian defensive weaknesses, embarrassing the Kremlin, and sowing unease among Russian civilians. Russian President Vladimir Putin blamed Ukrainian terrorists for an incursion, claiming that they deliberately targeted civilians, including children, in yet another terror attack, another crime. They infiltrated the area near the border and opened fire on civilians, Putin said during a video call. They saw a civilian vehicle with civilians, with children in it, and they fired on them. The alleged incursion came just days after Putin ordered the Federal Security Service, the main successor to the KGB, to tighten controls on Russia's border with Ukraine. A senior Russian diplomat warned Thursday that increasing Western support for Ukraine could trigger an open conflict between nuclear powers. Speaking at the UN conference on disarmament, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov denounced the US and its allies for openly declaring the goal of defeating Russia in a hybrid war, arguing that it violates their obligations under international agreements and is fraught with the war in Ukraine spilling out of control. Ryabkov warned that the US and NATO policy of fueling the conflict in Ukraine and their increasing involvement in the military confrontation is fraught with a direct military clash of nuclear powers with catastrophic consequences. He emphasized that Russian President Vladimir Putin's move to suspend the 2010 New START Treaty, the last remaining nuclear arms pact with the US, came in response to the US and NATO action on Ukraine. Emergency crews cut through the mangled remains of a passenger train on Thursday, progressing centimeter by centimeter in their search for the dead from a head-on collision in northern Greece that killed at least 46 people. Rail workers went on strike to protest years of underfunding that they say has left the country's train system in a dangerous state. The passenger train and a freight train slammed into each other late Tuesday, crumpling carriages into twisted steel knots and forcing people to smash windows to escape. It was the country's deadliest crash ever, and more than 50 people remained hospitalized, most in the central Greek city of Larissa. 6 of them were in intensive care. Fire service spokesman Yanis Artepis said the grim recovery effort was proceeding centimeter by centimeter. We can see that there are more bodies there. Unfortunately, they are in a very bad condition because of the collision, Artepis told state television. The cause of the crash is still not clear. The Larissa station manager arrested after the collision was charged Wednesday with multiple counts of manslaughter and causing serious physical harm through negligence, as a judicial inquiry tries to establish why the two trains were traveling in opposite directions on the same track. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his allies on Thursday denounced protesters as anarchists after they massed outside a Tel Aviv salon where his wife was getting her hair done. A chaotic end to a day of demonstrations against the government's plan to overhaul the judiciary. Sarah Netanyahu has long been a polarizing figure in Israel, and the incident late Wednesday in a posh neighborhood in Tel Aviv reflected Israel's emotionally charged divide over the overhaul, seen by opponents as an existential threat to the country. Demonstrators outside the salon chanted, "Shame, shame," but did not try to force their way inside. Hundreds of police were sent to the scene and eventually escorted her into a limousine. In a post on Instagram, Sarah Netanyahu thanked the police for helping her and thanked the public for what she said was an outpouring of support. Yesterday's incident could have ended with murder, she said. She called on opposition leaders to condemn the violence, anarchy, and incitement. Protest organizers held a small demonstration outside Netanyahu's office on Thursday, with some 200 people, most of them army veterans, joining former Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni a day after their self-proclaimed day of disruption turned violent when police used a heavy hand against participants at a Tel Aviv rally. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Thursday poured cold water on current Premier Rishi Sunak's new Brexit deal with the European Union, saying he would find it hard to vote for it in Parliament. Johnson said he hoped Sunak's deal would work, but argued it did not amount to the UK taking back control, a key Brexit slogan. The government has been bracing for a response from Johnson, a strong backer of Brexit who was ousted from office by ethics scandals in July 2022. Johnson is widely believed to hope for a political comeback and blames conservative colleagues, including Sunak, for bringing him down. Johnson left office with an unresolved dispute between the UK and the bloc over trade rules for Northern Ireland, the only part of the UK that shares a border with an EU member nation. Under Sunak, the two sides struck a deal which was announced on Monday. The Windsor Framework Agreement will ease customs checks and other hurdles for goods moving to Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK that were imposed after Brexit to maintain an open border between the North and its EU neighbour, the Republic of Ireland. The open border is a key pillar of Northern Ireland's peace process. The foreign ministers of India and China met Thursday on the sidelines of a gathering in New Delhi of top diplomats from the group of 20 industrialized and developing nations, signaling a thaw in their relationship, which has been tense since 2020. Indian Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar said the talks with his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang focused on addressing current challenges to the bilateral relationship, especially peace and tranquility in the border areas. There are real problems in that relationship that need to be looked at, that need to be discussed very openly and candidly between us. That's what we sought to do today, Jaishankar told reporters. Qin, who is in India for the G20 meeting, met with Jaishankar a day after Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said China attaches great importance to India. She added that maintaining good ties between the two countries is fundamental to their interests. Several people were injured by turbulence during a flight from the German city of Frankfurt to Mauritius on Thursday, the German news agency DPA reported. Around 20 passengers and crew members on board Condor flight DE2314 were injured when the plane hit turbulence about 2 hours before landing, an airline spokesperson told DPA. Mauritius is an archipelago nation whose main island is some 2,000 kilometers off the southeast coast of Africa. The airline spokesperson said those who were injured were being medically examined. It was not immediately clear how severe their injuries were, DPA reported. The cabin of the aircraft was supposedly also damaged, but no further details were given. The plane, an Airbus A330, carried 272 passengers and 13 crew members and landed safely at 6:29 a.m. local time at an airport near the capital, Port Louis. Egypt's Antiquities authorities on Thursday unveiled a newly discovered sealed-off chamber inside one of the Great Pyramids at Giza, just outside of Cairo, that dates back some 4,500 years ago. The corridor on the northern side of the Pyramid of Khufu was discovered using modern scanning technology. It measures 9 meters in length and is 2 meters wide, perched above the main entrance of the pyramid. Archaeologists do not know what the function was of the chamber, which is not accessible from the outside. In 2017, scientists announced the discovery of another sealed-off corridor, a 30-meter chamber, or about 98 feet, also inside the Pyramid of Khufu. Egyptian archaeologist Jahi Hawaz and the country's Minister for Tourism Ahmed Issa announced the discovery Thursday at an unveiling ceremony outside the pyramid. The Scan Pyramids Project, an international program that uses scans to look at unexplored sections of the ancient structure, was credited for the find. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 15,436.30. The NYSE Composite is increased by 7.33 points or 0.05%. Tokyo stock close price is 27,498.87. The Nikkei 225 index is decreased by 17.66 points or 0.06%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,310.6536. The Shanghai Composite Index is decreased by 1.69 points or 0.05%. Hong Kong stock close price is 20,429.46. The Hang Seng Index is decreased by 190.25 points or 0.91%. Bombay stock close price is 58,909.35. The Sensex index is decreased by 501.73 points or 0.84%. Let's have a look on today's sports stories. Gunmen threatened Argentine soccer superstar Lionel Messi in a written message left Thursday when they opened fire at a supermarket owned by his in-laws in Argentina, police said. Nobody was injured in the early morning attack, and it was unclear why assailants would target Messi or the Unico supermarket in the country's third largest city of Rosario, owned by the family of his wife Antonella Rocuzzo. The city's mayor, Pablo Jeffkin, went to the supermarket and lashed out at federal authorities over what he called their failure to curb a surge in drug-related violence in Rosario, located about 190 miles northwest of the capital of Buenos Aires. Police say two men on a motorcycle fired at least a dozen shots into an Unico branch in the early hours, leaving a message on cardboard that read, "Messi, we are waiting for you. Jeffkin is also a drug trafficker, so he won't take care of you." Messi has not commented. Widely considered the greatest soccer player of all time, Messi is revered in Argentina, especially since he led the national team to the country's first World Cup victory in 36 years in Qatar in December. Messi currently plays for Paris Saint-Germain and spends much of his time overseas, though he often visits Rosario, where he has a home in the suburb of Fons. The French team posted a photo on social media of Messi training on Thursday morning. Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter turned himself into Athens police Wednesday night and was released 16 minutes later after posting a combined bond of $4,000 on charges of reckless driving and racing in relation to a fatal crash that killed a teammate and a team staffer. According to Athens Clarke County Jail records, Carter turned himself in at 11:33 p.m. and was released at 11:49 p.m. Carter posted bond of $2,500 on the racing charge and $1,500 on the reckless driving charge. Carter, projected as one of the top players in next month's NFL draft, left the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis on Wednesday after being informed of the arrest warrant issued in conjunction with the January 15 crash that killed teammate Davin Willock and a recruiting staff member. The arrest warrant alleges Carter was racing his 2021 Jeep Trackhawk against the 2021 Ford Expedition driven by the recruiting staffer, 24-year-old Chandler LeCroy, which led to the wreck. LeCroy also was killed in the crash. The Boston Bruins were already on pace for the best record in NHL history when they added toughness and depth for what they hope will be a long playoff run. Now, General Manager Don Sweeney has helped secure the team's future too. The Bruins signed All-Star forward David Pastrnak to an 8-year contract extension on Thursday that will pay him $90 million, the sixth richest deal in NHL history. The deal locks up one of the league's MVP candidates through the 2030-31 season for $11.25 million a season. Pastrnak, who is 26 years old, is second in the league this season with 42 goals, adding 38 assists while leading Boston to the best record in the NHL. He has spent all of his 9 NHL seasons with the Bruins, totaling 282 goals and 302 assists in his career. Let's have a look on today's weather forecast. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest update. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia, available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jago TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BT Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.